you're watching the Daily Roundup by People's Dispatch, where we bring you some of the top stories from around the world. Let's take a look at the headlines. CELAC summit ends with declaration to strengthen regional unity. Palestinian prisoners to launch mass civil disobedience. Germany, United States to send tanks to Ukraine. Communist Party condemns Swaziland human rights lawyer's murder. Latin American and Caribbean leaders reaffirmed their commitment toward the unity and integration of the broader region on Tuesday, January 24. Various heads of state and government of the region's 33 countries made this commitment at the 7th CELAC, or Community of Latin American and Caribbean States Summit, being held in the Argentine capital Buenos Aires. In their speeches, leaders stressed the importance of the region as a part of the world that promotes and supports establishing world peace, democracy, protecting and advancing human rights, respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of countries, the principle of non-intervention in the affairs of states, and a more equitable multipolar world. At the conclusion of the summit, the leaders signed the Buenos Aires Declaration. It noted the purpose of the summit was for Latin America and Caribbean nations to be fully aware of its projection as a community of sovereign nations capable of deepening consensus on issues of common interest. The declaration highlights the role of nations in contributing to the well-being and development of the region and to urgently overcome poverty, inequality, and inequities. Among issues the region and the world face, they discussed are the coronavirus pandemic, climate change, and global warming. They also discussed the illegal decades-old economic blockade of Cuba by the United States and the political crisis in Peru. Significantly, the attending countries celebrated and welcomed Brazil's return to the summit. It rejoined the forum under current President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Thousands of Palestinian prisoners, including political prisoners, are preparing to stage a massive civil disobedience campaign across prisons in Israel to protest cruel and unjust conditions, multiple news reports said on Tuesday, January 24. Plans for collective action have been announced after roughly 140 Palestinian prisoners from different prisons were transferred to the notorious Naqab Desert Prison of Nafha over the last 2 weeks. They also follow the recently elected Israeli government announcing new rules and regulations which prisoners have denounced as extremely restrictive and punitive. Prisoners' rights groups have noted that the mass civil disobedience action can turn into a full-fledged mass hunger strike if the Israeli authorities don't reverse their decision to step up their mistreatment and assault on the prisoners. The new rules and policies governing the Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons were announced by the far-right Internal Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir after a visit to the Nafha prison earlier this month. After this visit, the minister tweeted about worsening the already terrible conditions in the prison for those whom he claimed had murdered Jews, even though the government is obligated to adhere to both Israeli and international law in regards to the humane treatment of prisoners. Making the conditions even worse than before and implementing new, harsher and more brutal policies against the prisoners will be a flagrant violation of the prisoners' human rights and both international and domestic laws. Nevertheless, the minister has proposed new rules such as severely limiting the visits of lawmakers to the prisons to meet prisoners, limiting family visits, stopping the sale of certain foods and other items in the prison canteen, and disallowing the prisoners' families to send them clothes. The government is especially targeting political prisoners and is discussing plans to transfer thousands of prisoners to the Nafha prison based on their political affiliation and in an attempt to break up the unity and organized structure that prisoners have established so far in other prisons among their respective political factions. In our third story, a major development that is poised to have a substantial effect in the war between Russia and Ukraine, both Germany and the United States have indicated their willingness to supply Ukraine with bigger, more powerful tanks and other heavy weapons, as per reports on January 24. Reports noted the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz agreeing to send Ukraine the German-made Leopard 2 battle tanks. Furthermore, he has permitted other countries such as Poland and Finland, who have purchased German-made arms, tanks and other equipment, to re-export them from their existing stock to Ukraine. Third countries normally must first get authorization from Germany before reselling or resupplying German-made arms in their inventory to other countries. Germany will reportedly send Ukraine at least one company of Leopard 2A6 tanks from the German army's own stock, consisting of more than 14 tanks. Meanwhile, the United States has said that it is on the verge of starting the process that would enable it to send its M1 Abrams tanks to Ukraine as well. According to reports, the announcement regarding the supply of these tanks would be made on Wednesday, with the United States in the first batch committing to send 30 Abrams tanks to Ukraine in the coming months. Russia has responded to the German and American announcements with condemnation and opposition, warning the West that sending these tanks and other heavy weaponry to Ukraine will not change things on the ground. It said that the West would regret its decision and that it is nothing short of a blatant provocation against Russia. It further added that sending tanks to Ukraine would disprove the West's argument that it is only sending defensive weapons to Ukraine. And in our final story, the Communist Party of Swaziland, in a statement on January 23, Monday, mourned the brutal and tragic assassination of human rights lawyer Thulani Rudolph Maseko. Maseko was killed on January 21, allegedly by government forces at his home in Kaluhenko, about 18 kilometers southwest of the capital, Mbane. He was reportedly killed in front of his wife and children. The party said that Maseko's killing took place just hours after a public declaration by the King of Swaziland, Mswati III, in which he declared that he would continue using the government's forces to kill pro-democracy activists. The party further noted that the Mswati regime has, similar to Maseko, killed more than 100 Swazi citizens from June 29, 2021 till the present day, and countless others before that, and that the regime and its forces must be held accountable for these killings, which are brazen and senseless. Additionally, the CPS expressed its condolences to the family of the slain lawyer and to the People's United Democratic Movement, the organization of which Maseko was a member, along with the entire liberation movement of Swaziland, united in fighting against the brutal autocratic regime of the king. Remembering Maseko, the party said that he used his legal skills to work towards bringing democracy to the country. He was thrown into prison several times before for his writings calling for democracy and freedom in the country, which included calling for the lifting of the ban on political parties. He was charged with several grave crimes against the state, such as sedition and terrorism, as the regime tried to suppress any dissent or opposition against its rule. Aside from the CPS, the United Nations also expressed its condemnation of the killing of Maseko, with the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, calling Maseko a stalwart of human rights who, at great risk to himself, spoke up for many who couldn't speak up for themselves. He added that Maseko's cold-blooded murder is a huge loss for Swaziland, Southern Africa, and the world. He further called on the Swazi government to ensure that a fair, transparent, and effective investigation is carried out to hold those guilty of the murder accountable. And that is all we have for today's episode. For more such stories, visit our website peoplesdispatch.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.